Hey guys, my name's Doug with Infotainment.com. Today we're working on the 2019 and up Ram heavy duty truck and the Ram 1500 DT. We have some exciting news for you guys. Those of you who have 19 through the 23 trucks, you can upgrade to the new UConnect 5 system. So here at Infotainment.com, we engineered it, we programmed it, we got it to work. So we're very excited to tell you guys a little bit more about it. So for your particular truck, you have three different options. The very first option is over here on my right, your left. This is the UBD option code. This is an 8.4-inch touchscreen, non-navigation touchscreen, but you do get wireless Apple Carplay and Android Auto, as well as the new UI, the new interface. It's an amazing system here. This is the entry-level UConnect 5 system for the 2019 and higher Ram trucks. Everything's plug and play. We include all plug and play wiring and plug and play programming. We program it to your particular truck, so whenever you get any of these upgrades, you just plug it in. Our harness or our interface also includes an RCA input, so you can add the factory cargo camera. So those of you who have the heavy duty, it's for the heavy duty only, you can interface a cargo camera with any of the UConnect 5 systems now. So you can keep an eye on your payload or your gooseneck, whatever the case may be. So that's all plug and play as well. So that's the very first option, the UBD option code, UConnect 5. If you want to add GPS navigation and HD radio, you're going to go with the UBL option code. So it's very similar in the sense that you're getting the 8.4-inch touchscreen, but you are going to add native embedded GPS navigation and HD radio. You'll also get Sirius XM 360L, which gives you a whole bunch of really cool features through Sirius XM. You could check out our website if you want to learn a little bit more about that. But again, with this upgrade here, it includes all the wiring, the programmers, everything, so you can get it working in your 2019 and higher truck. Now, those of you who want the Mac Daddy, the best of the best, that is the UBQ option code. This is the 12.1-inch touchscreen. Very similar as far as features as the UBL, but this is obviously going to give you the 12-inch touchscreen. You're going to get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You will get full screen Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I know many of you who have an existing 12-inch screen, the UConnect 4, you get the half the screen. Well, the UConnect 5, you get the full screen on the 12-inch. So obviously the best of the best, getting the 12-inch in the Ram, that's really what they're known for. So a great option there. So again, 2019 new body, 5th gen Ram, heavy duty in Ram 1500 DT, we can offer UConnect 5 in any of those trucks, okay? We're gonna show you a quick demonstration on how to install each of these in this particular Ram heavy duty behind me. This particular truck already has a factory installed 8.4-inch touchscreen, so it's gonna be even easier to install this. Otherwise, you'll get a bezel with the kit. We have all the information you need to know on our website, so come check us out there if you have any more questions. But let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so where we're gonna start today is at the original radio here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this radio out, then I'm gonna get into running our cargo camera third brake light kit, and I'm gonna get those wires up here. So from there, we can test out the cargo camera on all three of the radio options that we offer for this vehicle. But to remove this radio, where you're gonna start is right up top. You have this little tray cover, and once you pull that up, that'll expose two T20 Torx screws. We'll pull those out. And basically, once you have those screws out, there's nothing else holding the radio in except for some retaining clips. So from here, we can just yank it out. Now on the back side, the first plug that you're gonna need to unplug is gonna be your cigarette lighter plug or your power port. And then we'll move on to the yellow FACRA connection right up top here. Then we got a white one right next to it. Some of these are pretty tight, so it might help to have a little tiny flathead on you to help pull these out. All right, and I'm actually gonna use my pick tool here to press that little connector in the middle. Then we can pull our radio harness out. This is a lever locking type of harness. So once you release the lever, the little push button on the side, it'll push itself out of there. And we have our USB adapter. And finally at the bottom, our reverse camera. All right, and then we can pull the last remaining plugs from our bezel and we'll be in good shape here. Now we can set this whole radio aside until we're ready to swap out the radio and screen. So from this point, we have our radio removed. I'm gonna make my life easier and run the cargo camera right now. This is the harness that we have to get from the third brake light back to our radio cavity. And this harness right here, this is an easy DC. This is gonna give us power to that cargo camera. We can go ahead and actually plug that in right now and just let that kind of hang out in here. We'll plug that into our cigarette lighter or our power port connector, and we'll run up to the third brake light and get this installed. All right, so what you're gonna wanna grab to get started up here is a Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips tipped drill. You have 2 Phillips screws holding on the third brake light that we'll need to pull out. When you're pulling these out, be careful not to drop it in between your bed and the cab of your truck, or you may never get it back. But once you have those screws out, you may need a panel tool or a pry tool. You can use your fingernails. This seal has a tendency to get pretty stuck on here, depending if it's never been removed before. But once you pop your taillight out, disconnect the single connector on the back side of it. And from here, you're not gonna plug in your brake light just yet. We have to run our custom harness that's included with the kit. So what I'll do to make my life a little easier is I'll grab the side that plugs in behind the radio and a long zip tie that I cut the end off of, and I actually just made little points on the end of the zip tie here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape this on to the end of the harness to help me run this through our headliner. And at the end, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave a little flag on there, and this will just help me to unravel this whole thing once I get it to where I need it to go. But from here, in your taillight hole, you can actually see your headliner right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna feed this off to the side. I'm gonna run this down the driver's side of the headliner. So I'll just feed that in there a little bit. And now I'm gonna move over to the driver's side headliner, the weather stripping. I'm gonna pull that down. Hopefully have access to the zip tie pretty easy in there and then pull it out and through. So let's move on to the side of the truck. All right, so on the side of the truck here, I'm at the driver's side rear door. Weather stripping up here, I'm just gonna yank down. And I'm gonna reach my hand in here and see if I can't feel that zip tie if I kind of aimed it in the right direction. And it's actually right there. And now all we have to do is simply pull it through. And what you want to do is you want to keep an eye on the back side of that wire and make sure that you're not going to actually pull that too far through, and then you're going to lose it inside of your headliner. And now we simply can tuck this in the headliner all the way to the front until we make it to the radio cavity. All right, now when you get to this area here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my panel tool. I'm actually gonna pop the side cover off of the dash right here, just so I can take this wire that I ran and kind of tuck it through there. It'll drop down by the dash and then we can work it back up to the radio cavity. All right, now while it's in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw a couple zip ties on here, and then we can go ahead and put that panel back on. All right, from here, I'm gonna grab that same zip tie. I'm gonna try and fish it up into the dash, just like that. Now I'll pull all the slack through. All right, and with the excess, I'm just gonna coil up whatever I didn't need or didn't use. And I'll throw a zip tie on there just so it's nice and organized in our dash. All right, now we can pull the tape and we're ready to jump back in our bed and reinstall that new third brake light with the cargo camera. All right, now we're ready to reinstall the new brake light. Simply plug in your OEM connection, and this is our camera feed that we just ran. That'll plug into the camera right there. And now we can simply snap this into place and screw it in. And you're gonna use your OEM screws that you pulled out earlier, so hopefully you didn't lose those. All right, we're all set up here. Let's jump back in the truck and reinstall our upgraded UConnect 5 radios. All right, so we got the factory radio out of the truck here, and what we're gonna do is spin it around to the backside. We're actually gonna start with the UBD radio, and this is a pretty simple install. What you're gonna do is on the backside of your radio, you have 4 7mm screws holding on this plastic cover of sorts here, and the radio as well. So once you pull those out, all of this will come out. We'll install our UConnect 5 radio and we'll be good to go. And this plastic housing has this like lip on it that slides into this top piece here. So it won't just pop out, you'll just have to pull it straight back and you should be okay. And we'll pull our factory radio out. And if you notice, the top side has this plastic protrusion here. The new one has this metal one. We'll drop this one into place in the same orientation. And now we can reinstall the 4 7mm screws. All right, and that's pretty much it. We got our upgrade installed. We can jump back into the vehicle and continue on with our installation. All right, so from here, what we're ready to do is plug in all of the included harnesses that came with our kit. We have our radio harness here, and this actually has our camera connector on it as well. And basically the reverse of how we pulled it out, with that lever in the upwards position, you'll kind of stick it together and this will start to slide down. You press it down all the way and that'll lock it into place. But with that plugged in, we can get our camera connector that we ran from our cargo camera. We'll plug that in. We have our power port adapter that's going to give that camera power. We can plug that in as well. And that blue line on the camera is actually not used for this application, so you don't even have to worry about that. Then we have a USB adapter. This is to adapt the USB ports on the vehicle to the new radio, and this will only go in one way, so you can't get it wrong. There you go. And the last connector is this blue Fakra adapter, and that's going to go to the curry colored connector that was plugged into your OEM radio. It's going to go from curry to this teal color, but it's actually going to plug into the blue connector on the back side of the radio. But that's it for the connectors, or all the connections. Now we can grab our radio and we'll get everything plugged in. All right, with all of our plugs connected securely behind the radio, we can go ahead and pop our whole new radio back into place. And now we'll go ahead and reinstall the 2 torque screws right up on top of the radio. All right, now that we got our UBD installed, as well as the cargo camera, we're ready to install and run our Genie programmer. So to do that, we actually need to access the security gateway module, which is behind the dash cluster. So I'm going to show you how to get back there and plug that in. We'll run our Genie programmer, and then we can go ahead and test out the new radio. All right, in order to remove your cluster, you're going to want to grab a little panel tool, and you're going to want to pop it in between the cluster and your dash, the cluster bezel, and pop down on the top side. And once you have those 3 clips popped down, you can pull towards the rear, and that'll pop the rest of this piece right out of there. Now on the left side of your steering wheel, you have a small panel that will pop out on the bottom side with 2 clips, and the top is actually slid in to the dash. So you'll just pop out on the bottom, and then the top will just slide right out of there. Now for the driver's side, the radio actually covers the push button start switch here. This panel needs to be pulled back to access the 7mm that's behind this little vinyl or fabric cover for your steering wheel shroud. So what we'll do is we'll just pop it out. There we go. Just a little bit, and you can see we have access to our 7mm screw right back there, and we have one on the other side. All we have to do is pull those 2 out, and it actually helps if you have an angle driver or something small, just because getting behind the steering wheel can be kind of a headache if you're using power tools. If you're using hand tools, you should have a lot more access. And once you have those 2 screws out of this little cover, you can pop that off into the rear, and that doesn't need to be removed completely either. You're just trying to pull this down so you can access the 2 7mm screws that are holding in the bottom of the cluster. And the same like before, having an angle driver will actually help a lot in this situation. And then right up on top, it's going to be kind of hard to see, but you have 2 more 7mm kind of going in at an angle. All right, now with all 4 7mm removed, we're ready to pull our cluster out of there. And there's actually 1 connection on the back side. And pop that out, and we'll set this aside for now. Now we have access to our security gateway module, which is straight behind the cluster. All right, so way back behind your cluster area, there's the security gateway module. There's 2 plugs plugged in there, and they're actually going in on the side, just like this, in the same orientation. So we send you this bypass that you got to plug in. So all you're going to do is remove those 2 plugs, plug it into here, and that'll allow us to program the vehicle for the upgrades that we're just installing. So I'll go ahead and pull those out, just like that. And now I can plug in the 2 plugs, and they only go in one way to our bypass module. All right, now we're ready to run the Genie programmer. So before we run our Genie programmer, I'm going to turn the ignition to the run position. We can grab our Genie, plug the Genie in, and all we have to do is wait for the green light and the horn honk, and then we'll pull our Genie out. The vehicle's been programmed. All right, we got our green light telling us the vehicle's been programmed, and we can shut the ignition back off. All right, so now that we got the Genie programming finished, typically you would go back and put everything back together, but because we're gonna be running 2 more Genies for our 2 other radio upgrades that we're installing in this truck, I'm gonna leave everything out just the way it is, so I can run those 2 other Genies. Once I'm done with all the programming that I need to do, then I'll go ahead and pull this back out, reinstall the 2 connectors into our gateway module. At that point, we'll be done with the install. All right, so you can see we have our UBD installed, up and running. We have a completely different look from the OEM radio. And if you go into the settings menu, then to controls up top here, you'll see we have a cargo camera option as well as a rear camera. So if we click that rear camera, it'll give us the rear camera image. And you got cargo camera image as well, because we just installed that. Everything is working like it should. This is a really good entry-level UConnect 5 upgrade if you're looking to upgrade your heavy duty. From here, we're going to go into the UBL, and then eventually make our way to the UBQ, which is a 12-inch UConnect 5. Okay, so now we're ready to swap out the UBD for the UBL. The UBL actually comes with its own bezel, and in order to swap that out, pretty simple. I did put those screws back in to hold this radio in. We'll just take those back out and pop this radio out. You just want to yank it a little bit. There we go. And once again, we'll go ahead and unplug all the connectors that we connected earlier. All right, and when you swap in the new radio with bezel, you're gonna have to transfer over your auxiliary switches if you have them, as well as your trailer brake controller onto the new bezel. So let's move this over to the bench and get that swapped over. All right, so what we have to do to remove our auxiliary switches and trailer brake controller is remove these two T15 torque screws. Once you get those out, there's just some clips that kind of snap into place around the controls itself. So what you need to do is lift the clips at the same time as applying outwards pressure. And once you get them all, the whole panel will pop out. Then you can simply snap the panel back into place on your new bezel, and then replace the two T15 torque screws. All right, our controls are installed. Now we can go pop this UBL into our vehicle. All right, so going from the UBD to the UBL, you do get a few more harnesses and another, it's actually a separate radio module that you need to install. So with this module, you get a little bit of hardware that needs to go in because this mounts separately. It's actually going to utilize some factory location cutouts that these nutserts will pop into place so we can securely mount our radio. So we're going to have to pop in these 4 nutserts that's included with your kit. And if you notice, there's flat sides to the nutserts. You want those flat sides to sit on the flat sides of the holes. So they're actually different. On the right side, the flat sides need to be up and down. So when you pop those into place, they'll snap into place. And on the left side, you'll see those flat spots are actually left and right. So you'll want to make sure that the little nutsert is in the right position so it'll snap into place just like that. All right, next up is this climate control T-harness. Basically, this is going to give our screen power. So on the car side, we'll get the climate control connector, plug that in. This side will go back into the climate control, and the one up top here, also labeled, is for our display. So we can just let that hang out until we're ready to put the screen in. You'll notice we have one more cable here. This is the video signal feed for our screen, and this will actually get plugged in to the radio module itself. So on the UBD, we didn't have this connector. On this radio, because the screen is separate, we have a connector that goes from here to the new screen. So once this is in, now we can actually grab all of our radio connectors, plug it into the module, we'll install the module, and then it's simply plugging in our screen and whatever remaining connectors that we have. All right, now we can set our radio module in place. I'll tuck the harness and everything we're not going to use as best as I can behind the radio. Make sure to keep out the stuff that you're going to need to plug back into the bezel. All right, now all we have to do is install our 4 screws. All right, and the nice thing about this upgrade is if you ever wanted to go from the UBL to the UBQ, you wouldn't need to swap out anything except for the display. We programmed these to work with both, So if you got this upgrade and you wanted to upgrade to the bigger screen down the road, it'd just be unplugging the screen power connector and display and swapping the whole bezel, your controls over, and everything else can stay in place. All right, and I actually forgot to mention that we do have to swap over the power port from your original unit over to the new one. And that's pretty simple to do with the power port lid or cover open. On the back side, you have some clips in here. You have the bigger outside clips, but we're not going to focus on those right now. We're concerned with the smaller inner clips. You have a couple there. Applying outward pressure and pulling on those clips, you'll be able to slide the whole center out of your power port. And now those bigger clips will be free to be depressed and popped free. So once you get those out, now you can just simply pop everything back into place on your new bezel. All right, now we'll plug that in and pop the whole radio and screen and bezel back into place. All right, and you'll notice with the new radios that come with the bezels, you're gonna get a new pocket pad up here. Your old one will not fit in there, so you can discard that with your old radio or your old bezel. And we're not gonna put the screws in just yet. We're gonna turn this on, test it out, and then we're gonna bring in the UBQ, which is the 12-inch screen version. All right, and before we go ahead and turn it on, we'll run our Genie to make sure that the vehicle is programmed correctly for this radio upgrade. We'll turn the ignition on and we'll plug our Genie in. All right, we got the green light. That means we got successful programming. We'll shut off the vehicle, let it sleep for a little bit, let the radio get acclimated to the truck, and we'll turn it back on and give it a try. All right, now that we got the UBL swapped in and the UBD swapped out, we'll go ahead and turn it on and run through the features real quick, just like we did before. And we already previously set up our two phones to this radio also, so down here you're going to see this phone option either change to Apple Carplay or like it did Android Auto. So these phones are saved into this radio. Now the biggest difference from the UBD to the UBL is this feature right here, which is navigation. So this has TomTom navigation built into the radio, so you don't have to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay's built-in maps. If you don't want to, you can use the standalone navigation that comes with the unit. But everything else is very similar to the UBD. You have all your familiar Android Auto menu and options. The same thing, like you can use Waze, Spotify, Pandora, whatever your favorite apps are that you use now, you'll be able to use in this unit. And let me swap over to the Apple CarPlay so you can see that working here. You see the icon change to CarPlay. We'll hit that, and here you have all your same options that pull up here. It's a really nice upgrade going from the UBD to the UBL. Just because of that navigation feature right there. So if you're interested in navigation, this is going to be the unit for you. Now with that being said, here, let's try out that rear view camera and cargo camera that we have here, and that works like it should. But we're going to go ahead from here and swap in the UBQ, which is that nice 12-inch portrait display. Basically all the same features with a larger display. The nice thing about upgrading from the UBL to the UBQ though is that you can reuse the same module. That module is actually configured to work with both screens. We have it programmed here in-house, so if you're swapping from the 8 to the 12, you only swap the bezel. Everything else back there stays the same. So it's just pulling those screws out, popping this off, unplugging the screen, plugging the new one in, and you're good to go. After a little acclimation period, that screen will, or the module will recognize the larger screen and everything will work like it should. So we're going to swap that in now and run through the features on that radio as well. All right, and as I mentioned earlier, when going from the UBL to the UBQ, you don't have to change anything except for the bezel and screen. Everything else that you installed can stay installed in there. But we do have to swap out our controls as well as our power port onto the new bezel. All right, so now we got the UAQ ready to go. All we got to do is plug in those connections that we removed. All right, now that we got the UAQ snapped into place into our dash, you'd pretty much be done with your install at this point. You can go ahead and grab the two T20 Torx screws, replace it back in the top of your radio bezel. Then you can cover that with the provided little rubber flap cover in here. At that point, you would be ready to run your OBDGenie programmer. Once the vehicle is programmed for the bigger screen, we can go ahead and remove the security bypass and reinstall our gauge cluster. So we'll run our Genie now and then we'll test the radio out. All right, we got the horn and the green light. We'll pull the programmer out and we'll let our truck sleep and get the radio acclimated to the BCM. All right, we got the UBQ swapped in. Let's turn it on and run through some of the features like we did before. You can already see it's such a impressive display. But yeah, you got that very impressive navigation screen comparing to the UBL or the smaller 8-inch screens. And throw it in reverse real quick. You can see we still have our reverse image and cargo camera image displaying on the UConnect 5. We have our Android Auto and Apple Carplay is still paired to the same module because we didn't change that module. All we did was swap the screen out. But yeah, you have all your same menus that we've seen before. And let's swap in the Apple phone so you can get a glimpse of the Apple screen on this much larger display. And you see it basically feels like you have a tablet sitting in the center of your dash when you upgrade to the UBQ. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks for sticking around with us as we swapped in these 3 different versions of UConnect 5. We're going to leave the 12-inch version in our truck here. If you're interested in any 3 of these radios, we offer them on our website. You can find more information about them there, or you can give our sales staff a call and they can help you out and get you the right options that you're looking for. If you enjoyed what you've seen here and you want to see more like it, be sure to head back to Infotainment.com.